Let us look at some of the tools that are widely used by developers who work with Polkadot SDK. The Polkadot.js UI, which you may be familiar with, is a developer console and it is to be used by developers only. Another developer console rising to prominence is the Polkadot API or PAPI developer console. Depending on your preference, you can choose either of them and start interacting with the chains that are built with Polkadot SDK. For the demonstrations in this course, we will use Polkadot.js UI, and mainly we'll be focusing on the developer tab of this UI. All right, let us explore Polkadot Network's chain state here. You can notice that you can either query the on-chain storage or on-chain constants. On-chain constants would be values like how much dot is required to hold an active account on Polkadot, how much dot is needed to create a proxy account, etc. The big values shown here are in planks. Remember, 1 dot equals 10 to the power 10 planks. That's 10 zeros after 1, right? It basically associates a numeric value to deposits and also to limits, like how many days the dot stays bonded before you can unstake it, how many referenda can a single account vote on simultaneously, etc. While these constants are universal to the Polkadot protocol, the storage is specific to individual modules and accounts. These are typically dynamic values like how many nominators are in the staking system or how many governance participation logs are there on a specific account, etc. On-chain queries like these do not require any fees. You're free to make an on-chain query and then you'll get a result from the blockchain network. Then we have extrinsics, which are the calls that can be submitted to the blockchain network from your account. These extrinsic calls need to be signed by the user before submission. Submitting balance transfers, multi-sig transactions, transactions as a proxy account, submitting an on-chain remark, etc. fall under this category. One thing to note here is that submitting extrinsics typically involves fee payment as well, as the processing blockchain node needs to verify the signature and execute the transaction on behalf of your account, and the transaction call is replicated across the entire blockchain network. Now, if you'd like to query a different Polkadot SDK based chain, for instance, Polkadot Asset Hub, you could do that by navigating to the top left corner of Polkadot.js UI. There you go, select the Asset Hub and switch. And now you can see that the UI is actually interacting with Polkadot Asset Hub. This should show you a glimpse of the utility of a developer console like Polkadot.js UI. Even if you run a blockchain node on your local machine, you should be able to connect to it by selecting the local node option right there or specifying the appropriate port to which this needs to connect to. Now, we will explore more of its features when we get to them later on, but for now, I would like to show you what is called a zombie net. Let's say you got familiar with Polkadot SDK and were able to develop a blockchain for your use case and want to test it thoroughly before launching it as a parachain. Then ZombieNet is what you should be using. Alright, now if you want to test some features on a live network, the situation is a little bit tricky. It would be great if you can just fork the live network and change its parameters that suit you, and you can test it out. This is the exact use case of the tool called Chopsticks, which was developed by Akala Network. Chopsticks is integrated into Polkadot.js UI, where you just need to click on the fork locally button right there. And now the chain is ready for testing. It is also possible to manipulate accounts and balances in this fork. And there is a provision in Chopsticks to change the on-chain storage as well. Chopsticks can also be used to perform cross-chain testing. For instance, you can instantiate Chopsticks by specifying runtimes of two different chains and perform cross-chain testing. Chopsticks manages to do this without actually running the nodes of the blockchains and just by running their runtimes. Alright, as a developer using Polkadot SDK, you should get familiar with navigating the Polkadot developer documentation, Rust docs, and also the Polkadot and Substrate Stack Exchange, which has a repository of questions that are answered by the Polkadot developer community. So feel free to interact with these resources and get familiar with the Polkadot ecosystem.